In this animation, we'll see the remarkable way our DNA is tightly packed up so that 6 feet of this long molecule fits into the microscopic nucleus of every cell. The process starts when DNA is wrapped around special protein molecules called histones. The combined loop of DNA and protein is called a nucleosome. Next, the nucleosomes are packaged into a thread. The end result is a fiber known as chromatin. This fiber is then looped and coiled yet again. Leading finally to the familiar shapes known as chromosomes, which can be seen in the nucleus of dividing cells. Chromosomes are not always present. They form around the time cells divide when the 2 copies of the cell's DNA need to be separated. Using computer animation based on molecular research, we are now able to see how DNA is actually copied in living cells. You are looking at an assembly line of amazing miniature biochemical machines that are pulling apart the DNA double helix and cranking out a copy of each strand. The DNA to be copied enters the production line from bottom left. The whirling blue molecular machine is called helicase. It spins the DNA as fast as a jet engine as it unwinds the double helix into 2 strands. One strand is copied continuously and can be seen spooling off to the right. Things are not so simple for the other strand because it must be copied backwards. It is drawn out repeatedly in loops and copied one section at a time. The end result is 2 new DNA molecules. What you are about to see is DNA's most extraordinary secret: how a simple code is turned into flesh and blood. It begins with a bundle of factors assembling at the start of a gene. A gene is simply a length of DNA instructions stretching away to the left. The assembled factors trigger the first phase of the process, reading off the information that will be needed to make the protein. Everything is ready to roll. 3, 2, 1, go. The blue molecule racing along the DNA is reading the gene. It's unzipping the double helix and copying one of the 2 strands. The yellow chain snaking out of the top is a copy of the genetic message, and it's made of a close chemical cousin of DNA called RNA. The building blocks to make the RNA enter through an intake hole. They are matched to the DNA, letter by letter, to copy the A's, C's, T's, and G's of the gene. The only difference is that in the RNA copy, the letter T is replaced with a closely related building block known as U. You are watching this process called transcription in real time. It's happening right now in almost every cell in your body. When the RNA copy is complete, it snakes out into the outer part of the cell. Then, in a dazzling display of choreography, all the components of a molecular machine lock together around the RNA to form a miniature factory called a ribosome. It translates the genetic information in the RNA into a string of amino acids that will become a protein. Special transfer molecules, the green triangles, bring each amino acid to the ribosome. The amino acids are the small red tips attached to the transfer molecules. There are different transfer molecules for each of the 20 amino acids. Each transfer molecule carries a 3-letter code that is matched with the RNA in the machine. Now we come to the heart of the process. Inside the ribosome, the RNA is pulled through like a tape. The code for each amino acid is read off, 3 letters at a time, and matched to 3 corresponding letters on the transfer molecules. When the right transfer molecule plugs in, the amino acid it carries is added to the growing protein chain. Again, you are watching this in real time. And after a few seconds, the assembled protein starts to emerge from the ribosome. Ribosomes can make any kind of protein. It just depends what genetic message you feed in on the RNA. In this case, the end product is hemoglobin. The cells in our bone marrow churn out 100 trillion molecules of it per second. And as a result, our muscles, brain, and all the vital organs in our body receive the oxygen they need.
Did you know that you are fearfully, wonderfully made? God is the one who created you, breathed his breath of life into you. He has poured out in you skills, talents, and abilities unique to you and you alone. There is no one like you that has ever existed in the past, the present, and in the future. Want to know some amazing facts about you? At the moment of your conception, you have a replicating cell, also known as a stem cell, which is respirating and has its own DNA identity. Your heart began to beat just 3 weeks after your conception. Still don't think that's amazing? Well, listen to this. Our eyes can distinguish up to 1 million color surfaces and take in more information than the largest telescope ever created. Our hearing is so sensitive, it can distinguish between hundreds of thousands of different sounds. In one day, your heart beats 100,000 times, 35 million times a year, and during a typical human lifespan, the human heart will beat approximately 2.5 billion times, and your heart is made up of 80% water. Still not convinced? Well, there's one more thing you should know about. Ever heard of laminin? Laminin is a protein found in the extracellular matrix. The sheets of protein that hold all internal organs, also called the basement membrane. Laminin is vital to making sure your overall body structures hold together. Laminin tells other cells what to do and is described as the rebar of the human body. Without laminin, your body would literally fall apart. Here is a scientific diagram of the cell adhesion molecule laminin, holding your body together right now. Laminin, the molecule that is holding you together right now, is in the perfect shape of the cross that Jesus gave up his life on for you. Here is an electron microscopic image of an actual laminin molecule. You are being held together right now as you sit and watch this by Jesus Christ. He put his stamp of approval on you. Psalms chapter 139, verses 13 through 14 says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. You are a treasure to God. You are held together by Jesus Christ. You are fearfully and wonderfully made."
That is so cool.
Yeah. Little tiny factory inside small part of a.
So if death comes when the heart stops, doesn't life come when the heart starts? Pretty weak.
Well, it probably comes before that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, not later.
Oh, yeah. No. But see, that's just a trick that they want to use to deny. They just want to justify themselves.
Right.
They just justify themselves so that they can continue in sin. Isn't that what we do when we sin? We justify ourselves so we can continue in sin. And that's what the world wants to do by saying it's okay to kill baby. See, they'll call it fetus. They'll call it anything but right. Yeah, but they won't call the baby a baby. Yeah, or it's just a cell. It's called a cell. Soft language, right? So, but anyway, so just to see the working of our bodies inside, know there's an intelligent designer in them because they know what to do and they're putting together our DNA structure and healing it, redoing it. And so it's like, that's a factory inside there. Only an intelligent designer could do something like that, right? I mean, that's just not over evolution, over time. Right? So, well, if it took millions of years, think about that. Okay, if the fish like turned into a human being, which some people like, you got the little inwards on the car, got the fish, and then the feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so it took millions of years. So the fish try and say, okay, I'm going to come out of the water. I'm going to turn into a human being. Well, by the time the fish got a foot out of the water, it died. So how can it develop into feet? Because every time it tried to do something, it would die and then it would get extinct. It's not still happening today. That's the fact. It's ludicrous to think that some of this stuff even exists. And so it's crazy. Anyway, so we're going to talk about variety within created times. And we're going to see this right now in Acts chapter 10 and 12. But then we're going to go over to Genesis and talk about that. Because did all species evolve from one common ancestor? Right? Because that's what evolution teaches, right? That pretty much we all kind of spread out from one thing. So it's like, even if that was the case, there would still be have to be an intelligence in there somewhere, right? It can't just happen from like nothing, no intelligence whatsoever. And so anyway, in Genesis 10:12, let's just read that real quick. All right, or Acts, I mean, did I say Genesis? Acts.
Yeah.
10:12.
10, 12?
10:12. Acts 10:12. So this is for Peter's vision, right? So in verse 9, it says, the next day as they went on their journey near the city, Peter went up to the housetop to pray in about 6 hours. Then he became very hungry and wanted to eat, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance and saw heaven open and an object like a great sheet bound in four corners, descending to him and let down to the earth.
Yeah, are you reading Acts 24?
Yeah.
Actually, he started in 10:9.
Didn't I say 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Eventually. When you started reading. We got there. Yeah.
Now I'm on 12. Okay. In it were all kinds of four-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. Okay, so, and then of course, God told them, eat, rise, and eat. So, and so that's just one place where God is showing the different types of animals, right? And so, so we're going to look at Genesis chapter 1. That God repeats 10 times, or it says 10 times, that God created the different types of plants and animals, each according to its kind, or their kind. According to their kind. That's where we have to make the distinction. According to their kind. Okay, and we'll kind of get more into that, right? And we're gonna go over to Genesis. Well, we can go to Genesis 1. We're talking about what God created, right? All right, and so Genesis chapter 1. Let's see where. Okay, let's go to over to verse 20. Chapter 1, verse 20, where it says, then God said, let the waters abound with abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heaven. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. Okay, so a couple times just there, God's saying, he's going to create according to their kind. Right, so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so let's go back over to Genesis chapter 6. And in verse 19, Genesis chapter 6, verse 19. Everybody there? Okay. All right, so verse 19, chapter 6, Genesis. And of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark, or kind, right? To keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Okay, of the birds after their kind, of the animals after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. 2 of every kind will come to you to keep them alive. Okay, everybody got that? What was the main word there? Kind, right, okay. And then over to chapter 7, verse 13. On the very same day, Noah and Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark. They and every beast after its kind, all cattle after their kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, every bird of every sort. And they went into the ark, to Noah, 2 by 2 of all flesh, in which is the breath of life. So those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. All right, so we see there again that the Lord had all animals, 2 of each of their kind, go into the ark, right? Male and female. Yes.
If you go back to verse 2, and it talks about the clean animals, that he wanted seven of each, male and female.
Right.
I know we don't see that usually in the picture, that's half, but,
Oh, right. Yeah, there were certain ones that he had to do because he could sacrifice and stuff. There were some other things that Noah was going to do, and eating, yeah. And so there were certain things that Noah, that God told him to bring in, which would have been a clean one because, the Jews couldn't eat, had to eat kosher. And so, yeah, so there were certain ones that it was more than just 2 of the kind, but the main thing is that their own kind that were brought into the ark. Okay, and so we're gonna so let's look at that. Like I said, there's stuff. So it takes a little bit. Okay, when God instructed Noah to take 2 of every kind of land animal onto the ark, okay, and then in Genesis 8:17 he says it again, right? So then he says in verse 16, right, of chapter 8, go out of the ark, you and your wife, your son, and your son's wife with you. Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds, cattle, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, so that they may abound on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. Okay, so God commanded these animals to reproduce after the flood, right? So that was the whole purpose of bringing the 2 of one each kind onto the ark, male and female, so that way after the flood, when they get on the dry ground, then they can go now and start reproducing the earth, right? After their kind, right? That makes sense? Okay. Today's species show the potential variation that God designed within original kind. Variety remains limited. Cats are still cats, dogs are dogs. Yeah, you notice that dogs, and there's a lot of wild ones, especially around here. We see cats, everything else, and you don't see dogs breeding with cats. You don't see, little chipmunks breeding with cats. You don't see any other kinds breeding with kinds. Okay, now there's several different types of dogs, right? But they're the same kind of animal. Okay, like a wolf is still in the right. And so, okay, so what does the word kind mean? Since 2 of each kind of land animal and 7 of them were brought aboard the ark for the purpose of preserving their offspring upon the earth, which we read in chapter 7, it seems clear that a kind represents the basic reproductive boundary of an organism. That is, the offspring of an organism is always the same kind as its parents, even though it may display considerable variation. Like we said, there's several different kinds of cats, several different kinds of dogs, there's different horses, right? As far as the kind goes, right? What are some of the different kinds of horses? Miniature, zebras, donkeys, right? I mean, there's variations.
Shetland.
Okay, but then it's a different variation. It's still the same kind, right? Yeah, and so we see the different variations there, but the same kind, right? Okay, dogs, for example, exhibit tremendous variety, yet diverse breeds of dogs produce offspring with each other, indicating that all dogs are the same kind. Dogs will not interbreed with cats, however, since they are different kinds. Okay, Okay, modern breeding research therefore confirms the biblical concept of animals and plant kinds. Just like we see with the pollen and everything else, that there's only certain kinds that are gonna reproduce after itself. Even with the trees we see out there, like the oak tree and the other trees, it's like you don't have a ponderosa oak. Yeah. Right, so, and the pollen, I mean, even though there's different pollens that reproduce for different trees, right? You don't see intermixed pollens breeding with the other trees. They only breed with their kind, right? Why is that? I mean, if pollen is pollen, yeah, I mean, that would be evolution, right? That means you'd have pollen from a juniper tree all of a sudden, connect to an oak tree, and all of a sudden you have a juniper oak. Right, well, there's no juniper oak trees. I mean, why isn't that taking place if evolution is legit? Right? Well, yeah, they can do that.
And there was a foxtail tree. Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
that's
Yeah, that was human, right? Yeah.
That's what I was gonna bring up, but I mean, not all plants can be grafted together. It's, like a peach and a plum can work well together, but like an apple and a pear, are similar, but a pitted fruit like a peach and a non-pitted, like a, apple, they don't graft together.
Right.
Not in their part.
Yeah.
Fun fact, along the same line, is sheep and goats can breed. However, the fetuses always abort. Because it is not God's creation, not God's design for a sheep to become a goat or a goat to become a sheep.
Right, yeah, and so that's true. And so another nasty thing, bestiality, we don't see, when that takes place, we don't see all of a sudden a woman having, some birth of, some
TMI, man. It's,
That's
yeah,
what, that's what evolution should,
yeah,
produce.
Genetic codes don't line up.
it's
And
sick.
the same thing Barb was saying, if you breed a donkey to a horse, it will create a sterile mule.
Yeah.
Because they're not designed to really be.
Right.
Even though
Exactly.
they're even at the same time, they're not
Yeah.
designed to be in the same.
Right, yeah,
And
which
the
makes
Bible-
sense because they're made to be with their own.
Yeah, and the Bible speaks against bestiality too.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
And
I mean-
we're not evolution. Hunting is evolution.
That's
I mean,
why
you
the
can even
Bible-
see that in the animal kingdom, in the ocean where sharks are with other sharks, right? And, you see hammerheads with other hammerheads, you see, orcas, with orcas, right? I mean, you don't see,
You cannot see a hammerhead breeding with a white shark.
yeah, right, yeah, exactly, you don't see that taking place. I mean, that's just the natural order of things and how they were created. And so that's, that has to be by intelligent design, right? That's not something that just happens over years, because if evolution was true, then that would be happening. Just like he tried to prove that this bird changed over time. No, the bird didn't change over time. It's a different kind. It's a variation of a same kind of bird. Right? And so, like, that's clearly, like, we see that in dogs.
Yeah.
Right? There's all kinds of dogs now, and then dogs breed with dogs, and then they have other dogs. All of a sudden, you have a different variation of a dog. But it's still the same kind. That doesn't change, right? So, all right. Anyway, creation researchers have found that kind is often at the level of family in our modern classification scheme. For example, zebras, horses, and donkeys all belong to the family Equidae and can mate with each other to form hybrid animals such as mules, we just kind of talked about from a horse and donkey, and this one, I think, donkeys. Have you ever heard of those?
Yeah, it's like
Which is a zebra and a donkey.
and they're feral.
Donkey.
They have a donkey.
Okay, but it's a kind. It's a variation of one kind, right? So, however, there's no reason to assume that one-to-one correspondence between our man-made system and the biblical terminology, those two. You can't put them together. They have to be separate, right? So kind may be at a higher, taxonomic level in some cases, lower in others. God placed a potential tremendous variety within the original created kinds. This original variation, altered by genetic mutations and other mechanisms after the fall, such as natural selection, led to the great diversity of living things we see today. So, like we talked about, so man-made has done that based on the fall.
And like a liger, and a tiger and a lion, that they're sterile, they will breed together, but only if they're put together and that's all that they're left. They're not supposed to do
Right.
that.
Just like you won't see a panther or a leopard, and some of these other types of kinds breeding with others because it can't work. That's why now, even today, like incest is not a good thing. There's enough people in the earth now. People don't have to intermarry with their families, which causes problems. All right, questions? Comments? There's a whole bunch of stuff we can cover. Okay, let's look at just some of the questions. Good questions for evolutionists. Proverbs 3:19. All right, 3:19. Proverbs. Everybody there?
Why is song so long?
Huh? 3:19. Okay. And so it says, the Lord by wisdom founded the earth. By understanding he established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths were broken up and clouds dropped down the dew. So God did that. Right? So here's one of the things. So this is by Ken Ham, which is Answers to Genesis. He's the one at the museum there, the Art Museum, right? Ken Ham is the one kind of designed that thing, or they put it together. So atheist evolutionists often try to attack creation, right? The Bible or the character of God to keep people from asking questions of their religion. All right? Does that make sense? They do that. So that way, people don't want to ask questions, right? In other words, they attack Christianity in hopes of not having to defend their own worldview. Why? Because they have no evidence. Evolution is a theory, right? All this made up stuff is they're just theories. People think they come up with something, but there's no facts behind and no evidence. Even this even talks about several of the finds that people actually put together. They put together this jawbone of a ape and a skull of a man and thought that this was a Neanderthal or something like that, right? And they found out later that was debunked because that wasn't the case. An actual person did that. So there's a lot of evidence that contradicts evolution. And they haven't proven it yet. The missing link that they say is somewhere, it's still missing. Even though people still want to believe it. Right, yeah. They still believe it, even though the link is missing. It's still missing. They haven't connected the dots. Right? And they won't be able to connect the dots because God is the creator. Right? So let's look at some. Okay, a good offense may be one of the best defenses you can give. For example, if someone criticizes you for believing that all humanity came from Adam and Eve, a good response could be, you find it difficult to believe that all people in the world came from two people, and yet you believe that all people in the world came from a rock. At least we can demonstrate that people come from people.
Yeah.
Questions can be powerful. All right, here are a few that maybe help in a conversation. Questions to clarify. What do you mean by evolution in the first place? Right? What do you mean by science? How do you know that is true? Of course, they can't answer that because it's a theory. So they just want to reject God and Bible, right? Has that been observed? See, that's the other thing. Carbon dating, like people haven't been around for, that's like this National Geographic Channel and all these others. And even like you go to the Grand Canyon, well, this has been ran for 250 million years. And that's like, how do you even know that? I mean, the Great Pyramid, which we've been to, on top of it, it still has the cone of granite, right? Seen that? Right? The whole thing used to be granite. Well, we know that Great Pyramids were created in our history, right? Since from the beginning, like 4,000 years ago. Guess what? Most of the granite has decayed, just like the Great Sphinx. Its nose is gone. Over time, it's kind of the winds and everything else have decayed it to a point where a lot of its face is gone. And that's just been in 4,000 years. Not 250 million years. Think about that. It would just be dust right now. I mean, some of the stuff is just crazy. To think this stuff came around that long ago, right? Yes.
Oh, yeah. The one time I went to a thing where creation scientists was talking about it, the rate of erosion never changes. So if the Earth had been around as long as it could stay, it would have no mass. The entire Earth would just be completely flat. So, yeah.
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 Then we fall off the edge.
Yeah.
That was a big one.
I know, that's the other one. That's another Lucas. That's another thing that's bringing up right now. The
Ladder.
ladder, yeah,
Yeah.
back again. Even though the oceans aren't emptying. Like, what's underneath the earth? A bunch of roots sticking out. It's round, but it's a dome like. But it's flat. It's like a disc. It's only curved on one side. And we believe that.
I know.
I mean, I've flown around the whole world. It's like,
My brother believed.
I mean, you don't believe people who've flown around the world? Went like around the world? I mean, you didn't fly it to the, hey, there's the edge, and look, it's space after that. They go by because, in Revelation, it talks about the angels are standing at the four corners of the earth. Metaphor. Okay, it's like, anyway, it's kind of hilarious, but people believe that, right? Okay, here's the issue question. Where did matter and energy come from? If everything came about by random processes, then why do laws of nature follow precisely designed formulas? Right? Like F equals MA or E equals MC squared. Right? Where did life come from? Where's the evidence for the millions of information gaining mutations? Where are the millions of transitional fossils leading up to the Cambrian period? What proof do you have that a global flood could not have occurred? That's the biggest one because most of the evidence that they're finding actually are in layers. Prove that there was a flood. Right? We can talk about that too. I mean, there's just so much out there about evolution and creation. The creation is completely demolishing evolution now. With all the technology we have, it's just proving God exists. So, has anyone repeated changing a single-celled organism like an amoeba into something like a cow? Right. What experiments have been conducted over millions of years that verify that it takes millions of years to form do you know that? It's taken millions of years to do that. How do you know that God says 6 days it was created? The earth is 6,000 years old. Yeah, was it hovering? I believe, yeah. It says it was without form. Yeah, was there dirt and water? Yeah, so there was something there, but it was without form. Then all of a sudden God just went and caused like a little tornado and spun the thing into a round ball. Right? I mean, and that happened 6,000 years ago. Worldview question. If life is ultimately meaningless, then why are you arguing? Why are you arguing? If the material universe is all that there is, what makes you think that logic, truth, and information exist? Right? Since they are all non-material. If people are simply rearranged chemicals obeying laws of nature, how can anyone criticize what anyone else does? Why does a material universe follow immaterial laws? That's like intelligence being created by unintelligence. All right. So anyway, then there's different views of evolution. Right? You got the Lamarckian, traditional Darwinism, neo-Darwinism, punctuated at equilibrium. So people just keep coming up with these different things in order to just not, because they don't want to be accountable. Because clearly it tells us in the Bible in Romans, right, that everybody knows that there's a God, creator, based on looking at the universe. Everybody knows there's a God. And so people just want to not be accountable to a God, but that's not going to matter because one day they're going to be accountable. So they can try to convince themselves that there is no God and that they're not going to be accountable. But what does that mean? If you say the sun isn't hot, I can say the sun's not hot. Look at it's cold. The sun's not hot. Does that mean that the sun's not hot? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I say. Everybody has opinions. It's amazing, right? Just follow the evidence. Evidence proves there's a God. Yes.
What is about the people who never hear about God?
Well, God's got an answer for that too. It's in Romans.
So even the rocks and trees cry out with you.
Yeah, and it tells us in Romans, if they make a law to themselves, then that's how God will judge them. Based on saying, you live here, we don't know, we know that there's some kind of intelligent being that created this earth, but we don't know how, we haven't heard that God sent his only son to die for us. But, so what I'm going to do is, in our community, we're going to not steal from each other. We're not going to kill each other. We're not going to cheat on each other. When I get married to this woman over here from this family, I'm not going to do something against their family or do something with this woman over on this family, right? And so they make a law to themselves. God's going to answer based on that. It tells us that in Romans. That God has an answer for everything, even before the law. They weren't held accountable for the law like Cain wasn't. They weren't held until the law came. But God still isn't passing over it. He's going to judge them based on their lifestyle. God has an answer for every single person.
And if you want to make sure that everybody's streets taxable.
All right, anything else? But, yeah.
I was just gonna say, in coordination with what you just said, when my parents were missionaries and all that, to the Navajos, there was this one old woman that said when my dad and mom finally, were in contact her family and tell her about the love of Christ, she said, I knew it. I knew it. She said, there's no way that the coyote god or the bear god or the sun god or the moon god could have done. They're just animals. They're just created. But I knew that there was a master creator that loved me. And I just didn't know who he was. And then when they told her and her family about Christ, she accepted she accepted Christ with glad heart.
Yeah.
Because she knew
There was something,
that
yeah.
God was there. She just didn't
Right.
know what his name
Exactly.
was.
Right, yeah, and I've seen that in other, in, the Evangel magazine where missionaries went over to, Tonga and other places, and these people were serving God, but they didn't know, who like that, who he was, but they wanted to do what was right based on what they believed. They knew there was some, a creator out there who was intelligent and who was loving, who was righteous. So they knew all that, but it's just then when they got the message, they were able to accept it, see that that was God, like Paul when he went to Athens, right? He went
Right.
and they had all these gods, and statues and stuff like that, and he's telling them the unknown God, right? He's telling them who that God is, and so there are people out there who are searching for the truth. But evolution, I mean, anybody else got anything on evolution? Would be interesting. I mean, it's just crazy. That's just one thing, creation versus evolution. I mean, evolution is just, it's just a theory. And of course, with all the technology we have now, it's really debunked. But still, people are still holding on to that because they just don't want to be accountable to God, which isn't gonna matter. They're still gonna be accountable to God.
Seems like DNA sort of so the kind is just fine, right? Uses the DNA part, right? And man has been trying to change that DNA. And because not man, to say that man is a sort of evil, and trying to change that DNA from son to fifth. We see another God, the son to man, or the Holy Spirit to God.
Right.
And so maybe trying to change the DNA. From that point, we're still trying to change the DNA for today. And so, I mean, I've heard of experiments that government has done. They've taken humanity or humans to apply it to some kind of animal. They haven't lived too long, but they have experiments.
Yeah.
They're trying to change that today. They also are going back to, I don't know, I looked from the top team top of whomever, finding his body or his brain and pulling out DNA and trying to influence, like the giant of old too.
All right.
And he's trying to pull that DNA out. Serious.
Right. Yeah, they're trying to
So they
live forever.
evolution is a cover for it.
Yeah.
We are trying to evolve into something we're not supposed to evolve.
That's right. And it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Just like the brain, they start messing with the brain. God's gonna say, okay. I mean, that's how it happened with the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
We don't need it. We don't, God told them just first go across, the different lands, right? And they decided not to. Nope, they're gonna stay one people and then they're gonna build this great tower and they're gonna be able to do whatever they want. God said, okay. If you don't wanna go disperse, I'll force you to disperse. And they changed the language. Right? So now they had to go out of like kinds.
Well, that's what happened after, said, well, it was like that story.
Right. Yeah, you do evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tower of Babel was Nimrod, yeah,
Nimrod.
Nimrod, yeah.
Yeah, which is a name like people like. Yeah.
Like Ken just called it mutation, not evolution.
Yeah, people don't do that. I mean, with the movies and stuff now, they're trying to make it look like it's okay. Yeah. Ninja Turtles. You know, you got the X-Men, which are mutants, you know, and so you got these different things. So they try to, just like they're doing now with, oh, just so you know, Macy's Day Parade, Thanksgiving, there's gonna be a group in there, part of the parade. Anyway, so, I'll be like,
We're doing that sometime.
yeah, but they're promoted this year, I guess. Anyway, but we see that, so they always try to incorporate or change or, you know, advance something that's evil. You know, the devil wants to have something of his own that he can claim that's not of God. Right?
They're trying to normalize it. Every TV show, every movie you see now has all this stuff in there. You just, you know, they're trying to normalize it.
They've been doing that for years. It's desensitizing.
Exactly.
Everything. Yeah, it's acceptable.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's why we have to keep our heads up, looking up.
Yep.
Our redemption draws nigh, right? God's coming soon. So we just have to be ready, be in the word, knowing that, hey, that's the truth. This is the truth. God is, God, and, everything else doesn't really matter. God is what matters.
And you have to have wisdom to God, right? That's what we do.
Yep.
If we're not assuming that wisdom, we'll be full of
Right.
So,
Exactly.
the blessing for all of us as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta stick with the truth, and we gotta speak the truth. You know, when it rises up, somebody wants to talk some nonsense, then you gotta speak the truth. And whether they get angry, or they get mad at you, or they turn their back on you, or whatever, you know what? Yeah. it's the truth.
Does not come back.
But first it's gonna piss you off.
So, yeah, and so we just have to stand for what's right. And God's right. Everybody else is.
I saw something the other day, it was something that life's too short to be happy, and then the other side was, eternity's very long to be fulfilled. I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. So, anyway, that's the thing. Have you got your ticket? Have you made your reservation? All right. All right. Anything else? No? All right, let's break.